young preachers who were staggering the world, young but full of fire. The first week of the meetings, every night, they would preach the law. Then, when everyone knew they were sinners, the second week, the whole week, they would preach the judgments of God until everyone knew where they were going and trembled. And then the last week, they would preach grace. And then he made this staggering statement. To his knowledge of all the souls, wherever they went, over all the years of preaching thus, to an old man, he is not conscious of one that backslid. This is the testimony throughout the world of this godly man. The method through which the old preachers preached. The godly Charles Finney. In 1821, God took hold of this man, Finney, here in America. He was studying for law. And he bought himself, because he was amazed at the amount of the law that he was studying that was from directly the Old Testament of the Holy Bible. So he went out, bought himself a Bible, and began to study it, and came under the most awful conviction of sin. He went out in desperation into the field, crying out to God. And God swept down and saved that man's soul as he looked up to Jesus for mercy. But oh, he was desperate. He was so stunned at the revelation of God in his heart that he was saved, as the Holy Spirit bore witness with his spirit, and the peace of God flooded his heart. And he walked back to the town crying in his heart, if I am truly saved, I will give my life to bring the world to God. The next day, he left law forever and pursued God. He went across the town, down the streets. Every soul he found, he went to with this joy unspeakable, full of glory, with a peace of God that passes all understanding, flooding his heart. The Holy Spirit bearing witness with his spirit that he is the child of God, with this knowledge of eternal life and peace with God. He swept through that town, leaving no stone unturned as he went from soul to soul to soul and soul, weeping, crying out of what God had done in his heart through the law, making him become desperate to seek God. He was taken by a local preacher and taught the scriptures, taught the doctrines of the Bible for a short time, and then given one opportunity to preach in one of the pulpits of the town. So anointed was this man, as young as he was, no theological seminar, that the whole town and community was staggered and shaken to the core. A holy hush swept through that whole community as men and women and children began to seek God. He was then immediately asked to speak in other towns. He went to a town where there was so much depravity and so much evil that he shouted from the pulpit in the first meeting that they are like hellhounds with all their blasphemies. Hellhounds on their way to hell and their obscenities. Oh, the whole town was angry. But everyone came back. It's amazing. You can make people angry, they'll come back. So don't worry, you might come back tomorrow. Oh, they came back. And what did he do? He preached on the 10 Commandments in the light of the rest of the Scriptures, but especially in the light of the rest of the law. By the time he came to the 6th commandment, thou shalt not commit adultery, wicked men began to fall down across the whole church, the whole building, and falling on their knees weeping, and falling on their faces sobbing in fear of judgment of God as they were convinced of their evil through the preaching of the law. Eventually, within a short time, the entire community had sought God for salvation. They could not find one soul in the entire town and community that had not sought God with the whole heart. And this is wonderful to those of you that criticize him. Go back in history. In that particular town, not one soul was known to ever backslide. 10 years went by. 1,500 towns and cities across America had turned to God, mostly in their entirety, as that town. And what did he preach? The law. For by the law is the knowledge of sin. God says he will convince the world of sin. And if that's not the first work, nothing you say was the Holy Spirit is the Holy Spirit. If that is not the first work God ever did in your heart, no matter who you are, and no matter what experiences you have. Finney shook the world as he cried out fearlessly for those 10 years.